I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm standing in a high school gymnasium. It's 2017. Folding chairs are in the gymnasium floor. Fluorescent lights are hanging from the balances. Worn-out banners are in the rafters. The room smells like old varnish, sweat, and history. As I scan the room, I recognize people. Former teachers, parents of kids I grew up with, people who watched me speak at assemblies, the people who watched me grow up. This wasn't a room of strangers. This was my city looking back at me. Some with fear, others with disdain, and some with a great sense of hope. At the time, I was leading our local community foundation. We were the institution stewarding millions of dollars raised because this city had again taken a punch. Money that was born out of pain and fear and betrayal. I knew before I opened my mouth that this wasn't a room that you perform for. Growing up, this is where basketball games were played, rivalry games, and you learn something early in places like that. This isn't a room you perform for. This is a room you prepare for. And I was quite prepared. I wasn't nervous because I didn't know my numbers. I was a little nervous. I was a little nervous because I knew the burden that people were carrying. As I was walking through the data, not the information on our annual report or on our website, but the stuff that you needed to get into a rhythm with the crowd, I'm in my flow, and a man stands up. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't wait to be called on, but he pointed at me after locking eyes with me. Imagine his index finger pointed directly at my chest, and he shouts out something like, "Where the money at?" And the room went quiet. Not angry quiet, the kind of quiet where 200 people are waiting to see whether or not leadership will flinch. I remember my heart speeding up. Not panic, but recognition. Because that question wasn't really about spreadsheets. It was about trust. And whether that kid they had watched grow up and become someone that they couldn't trust anymore. Standing there, I understood something with absolute clarity. Leadership isn't proven by where you come from. It's proven by whether you're willing to stand in the fire with people long enough to earn trust back when it's already gone. To understand why that moment mattered so much to me, you have to understand where I'm from. I was born and raised in Flint, Michigan, on the north side of Flint. The north side is code for a lot of things. It's code for being black. It's code for being poor. It's code for seeing the violence of Flint streets outside of your bedroom window and not on the 6 o'clock news. I grew up in a city known for its resilience. And no city should be defined by its ability to take a punch, even when it's proven that it can. Imagine this, sold out Everbank Stadium, 80,000 fans, seats all filled. There's an overflow of 20,000 people tailgating in the parking lot. 100,000 people. It's a lot of people. Well, in my hometown, 100,000 people, 10,000 seniors, 10,000 children ages 0 to 5 were exposed to lead and toxins in their drinking water. Poisoned drinking water. Water is something that should be safe. So something that was supposed to be life-giving changed who we were and who we would become. And outside of Flint, that became the story. A city that took a punch. A community that survived. A place defined by its damage. Flint's a tough city. But toughness isn't enough. Toughness isn't something you're born with. Willpower doesn't protect you from harm, and resilience doesn't erase hurt. It just teaches you how to carry it. And that distinction really matters for leadership, because I wasn't born strong. I was born with innocence, curiosity, a kind of conscious naivete that every child deserves. You learn how to be strong because the world teaches you how, and life absolutely does. In the day-to-day, this resilient place was home. Elementary school, middle school, high school, church spelling bees, the first time standing at a microphone. You see demographic boundaries when you see a city from the outside, but from the inside, you see people, neighbors, teachers, parents, kids who needed an extra plate, and elders who carried the history of our community in their bones. That's where I'm from. That's where my identity was shaped. And everything I know about leadership, every instinct, every truth, every muscle I rely on, it was formed there. Not by toughness, but by learning how to hold pain without letting it define me. See, identity was never the boundary of my leadership, but it was the beginning of it. Before that uncomfortable moment in the gym, I found my way into the work I do now. I'll tell a quick story. One day, Charlie Brown tells Lucy he wants to be a philanthropist. Lucy looks at him and says, "Charlie Brown, you can't be a philanthropist. You got to be rich to do that." Charlie, in his quiet, plain-spoken way, says, "I want to be the kind of philanthropist who gives away other people's money." I laughed too when I first heard that, but I also recognized myself. Because long before I had access to decision-making, long before I had influence over where dollars meant, I understood there was a system that decided who mattered, who benefited, and who was missing. And somehow, this boy from Flint ended up making his life's work inside that system. Not giving away my own money, but stewarding the generosity of others. And that is both an honor and a weight. Because I grew up on government cheese, white box cereal, and white box Christmas gifts. Imperfect systems, but systems that carried us just enough to keep going. And those moments didn't just feed us, they formed me. Today, as president of the Community Foundation for Northeast Florida, that same boy from Flint sits at a table stewarding nearly $1 billion in philanthropic capital. Funds entrusted to shape the future of my community. And when I walk into rooms now, I carry two things: responsibility and memory. Memory of brown box cheese and white box gifts set against the weight of $1 billion in trust. Sometimes it feels like walking into rooms where the carpet is soft, but the air is heavy. Because trust weighs more than money ever will. My mentor once told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Isaiah, you're not as smart as you think you are. You're as smart as I think you are, so don't disappoint me." I remember nodding, like you all are right now, but what I felt was fear mixed with permission. Fear of failing people who didn't look like me, and permission to lead like someone who knew that trust actually cost something. When I entered this field, there were only 6 black CEOs of community foundations in the entire country. 6 out of 900. Today, over a decade later, there still hovers around 30 out of 950. So my presence in this work has never been about representation alone. It's always been a mix of both identity and excellence. I'll tell a quick story about my hometown. I had the responsibility of leading a civic institution during one of the most man-made disasters in our nation's history, a Flint water crisis. $46 million was raised from 20,000 donors from across all 50 states and 15 different countries, dollars entrusted to help a community who again had taken a punch, that felt betrayed, that was damaged. I didn't just lead through that crisis, I cut my teeth in it. I navigated it as a person who was not only in Flint and working for Flint, but from Flint. I had 2 baby girls at home, little girls who had also been exposed to poison in their drinking water. So this wasn't abstract. This wasn't policy alone, or systems alone, or leadership theory. This was personal. This was my testimony. Crisis clarified me. It sharpened my judgment. It deepened my empathy. And it forced me to lead with courage and humility at the same time. And it's from that credibility, earned the hard way, that I say this. Stop weaponizing identity and stop romanticizing it as well. Identity is not something to be used against you. It is not something to put on display for comfort. It's something to be honored and stewarded and brought into leadership with honesty and restraint. For the first decade of my leadership, I led in a majority black city. When I came to Jacksonville, a place where no single identity is the majority, leadership shifted. And Florida context matters here, not because we all agree, but because we don't. This is a place that is growing fast, 22 million people. It's changing fast with different people, but difference isn't theoretical, it's lived. In a place like this, you don't get to flatten identity and still lead well. You have to learn from it and live from it and grow through it. That allows me to say this: I will not weaponize my identity, and I will not apologize for the lens that created my leadership. I will lead from my blackness. I will use it as clarity. I will use it as connection. I will use it as a bridge. Again, identity was never the boundary of my leadership. It was the beginning of it. And every one of you must start to lead from your identity as well. The part of yourself the world told you to silence. Lead from your queerness. Lead from your immigrant story. Lead from your rural upbringing. Lead from your ethnicity. Lead from the part of yourself the world told you to silence. Because your identity is not a liability. It is your power source. Anybody here play Sonic the Hedgehog? This idea of it costs to do something good. You go through the levels, you collect rings in order to run into spikes that are going to happen, and you just keep going. That game taught me that crises are inevitable. Spikes are inevitable. But failure is not. And that's why the game offers these opportunities for you to collect rings. Rings as social capital, relationship capital, relationship trust. That's what keeps you alive when you hit a spike. The real question is not if you're collecting rings or social capital or relationship capital, but if you're only doing it for yourself. Should we not be doing that for everyone else? The kind of leadership that is necessary in order for us to not flatten identity is resilience architecture necessary for a multicultural, multi-ethnic democracy. And that is all about widening the table. A real democracy is not when everyone gets their way. It's when everyone has a way in. My friends, that's the calling. That's the work. And I know there are folks that might be disappointed that we're talking about not flattening identity. But one of my mentors would always say, leadership is the art of disappointing your people at a rate they can absorb. I hope I've disappointed you just enough. Thank you.